Veterans coming home from World War II is what brought America's attention to mental health in the mid-20th century. War can have disastrous effects on a person's psyche, along with physical contributions as well. In order to lower the number of veterans and soldiers breaking down, psychiatrists focused on screening people who they thought were more likely to suffer from this illness. This includes a host of mental illnesses such as nervousness, like nervousness, skittishness, isolation, depression, and the list can go on and go on. In World War II, they called this illness a war neurosis. It wasn't until after the Vietnam War that it was labeled PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. War neurosis in World War II was double than that of World War I. Back in 1943, 34% of all battle-related disorders had to do with mental illness related to combat. One of the treatments for PTSD/war neurosis was injecting sodium pentothal and telling soldiers to relive the most traumatic battles of their times. They also used, in worst case scenarios, electric shock therapy. 60% of the nervous breakdowns occurred in the States. In the beginning of World War I, there were 35 psychiatrists in the armed forces. By the end of World War I, the number increased roughly 29 times to about 1,000 psychiatrists. Because of the inadequate understanding of stress and PTSD, most treatments developed in World War II and the following decades were almost completely ineffective. Now today, there are many programs sponsored through the Veterans Association, aka the VA, that treat and help soldiers combat and overcome this illness. According to the VA, almost half of World War II veterans reported signs of post-traumatic stress. This is extremely high considering the stigma around mental illness, especially back then. As well, also another thing that brings up to light is most of the people that suffer through PTSD, not all, but there's quite a few that end up committing suicide because it gets too much, they can't handle it, or they feel if they get help, they'll be isolated. You can find all of this information in Dr. Han Pohl's and Stephanie Oak's War and Military Mental Health.
Thank you.